Success is a strange thing. It can fill your house with awards and your calendar with appointments and still leave one chair at the dinner table permanently empty. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and I am 95 years old. I built a business people still talk about in my town, but I lost the one thing I once believed would always be waiting for me at home. I was born in 1931 in a small farming town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew your birthday and your business in equal measure. My father ran a hardware store on Main Street, and my mother kept our home running with the quiet precision of a watchmaker. We did not have much, but we had supper together every night at 6, no matter how busy the day had been. Back then, I thought that was simply how life worked. I did not realize it was a choice my parents made over and over again. I was a restless girl. While other children were content with picnics by the creek, I was studying the way my father ordered inventory and negotiated with suppliers. I loved the rhythm of transactions, the idea that you could build something bigger than yourself if you were willing to work hard enough. By the time I was 16, I was keeping the store's books after school. Numbers felt dependable. People, I would later learn, are not as predictable. At 22, I married Daniel Hayes, a quiet, steady man who worked as a mechanic. Daniel had hands that could fix anything and a laugh that could soften my sharpest moods. He believed in slow Sundays and long dinners. I believed in expansion plans and bigger storefronts. We loved each other deeply, but even in those early years we were walking at slightly different speeds. When my father passed away unexpectedly, I was 28 and newly pregnant with our first child. The hardware store was drowning in debt, suppliers were circling, and customers were drifting away. I made a decision that felt brave at the time. I would take over the store, modernize it, and prove that a young woman could not only keep it afloat, but make it thrive. Daniel supported me without hesitation. He took extra shifts so we could stabilize our finances. He rocked our baby girl, Emily, to sleep, while I stayed late reconciling accounts. I told myself this was temporary, just a few hard years to secure our future, just until the numbers looked steady again. But success is rarely satisfied with a few years. Once the store began to grow, I saw new possibilities everywhere. I expanded into home appliances, then into building supplies. I hired staff, negotiated larger contracts, and eventually opened a second location in the neighboring county. People began to call me formidable. They said I had vision. They admired my discipline. At home, life continued, but I experienced it in fragments. I remember Emily's first school play because I arrived halfway through and watched from the back. I remember promising her I would attend her piano recital and then calling at the last minute because a shipment had gone missing. I always had a reason. There was always something urgent, something that could not wait. Daniel never raised his voice. That was not his way. Instead, he would sit at the edge of our bed late at night and say, "Eleanor, we miss you." He said it gently, without accusation. I would reassure him that this was for all of us, that one day we would slow down and enjoy what we had built. He would nod, though I could see he was not convinced. By the time our son Thomas was born, the business was flourishing. We had moved into a larger house with a wraparound porch. From the outside, it looked like the American promise fulfilled. Inside, there were evenings when Daniel and the children ate without me, because a supplier from Chicago was in town, or because I was reviewing quarterly reports. I told myself they understood. I told myself children are resilient. Years passed in a blur of growth charts and profit margins. I sat on the local business council, mentored young entrepreneurs, and was featured in the regional paper as a pioneer for women in commerce. The praise felt warm and satisfying. It filled a space in me that craved recognition. I did not question why that space seemed to grow larger the more I fed it. Emily became a teenager with opinions and secrets I did not fully grasp. Thomas developed a love for baseball, and I cannot tell you how many games I missed. I remember one particular Saturday when he asked me, very calmly, if I would be at his championship game. I looked at my calendar and saw a meeting with a major distributor. I told him I would try. He did not argue. He simply said, "It's okay, Mum. I know you're busy." Those words should have unsettled me more than they did. Instead, I felt relieved. I told myself he understood the importance of what I was building. I convinced myself that providing well for my family was the highest form of love. The night that changed everything did not arrive with drama. It was not marked by a catastrophe or a public failure. It was an ordinary Tuesday in late October. The air was cold, and the store had just secured a contract that would double our annual revenue. I stayed late to celebrate with my management team. There were handshakes, congratulations, and plans for further expansion. When I finally drove home, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark, except for the porch light Daniel always left on for me. I remember feeling proud, almost triumphant. I had done it. I had taken a failing family store and transformed it into a regional enterprise. I imagined telling Daniel about the contract in the morning, imagined his quiet smile of approval. As I stepped inside, I noticed a stack of papers on the kitchen table. On top was a college acceptance letter addressed to Emily. She had been waiting to hear from a university out of state. I had promised to open the letter with her. I stood there in my coat, reading that letter alone in the silent kitchen. She had been accepted. There were handwritten notes in the margins from her, little exclamation marks, and a date circled for orientation. The envelope was torn neatly, carefully. She had opened it without me. Daniel's voice came softly from the hallway. He had been waiting up. He told me she had received the letter at dinner. She had been excited at first, then quiet. She said she did not want to disturb my meeting. In that moment, the house felt unfamiliar. I walked down the hallway and looked into Emily's room. She was asleep, a suitcase half-packed on the floor, because she planned to visit the campus the following month. I realized I did not know when she had grown old enough to leave. I went back to the kitchen and sat down. The contract papers from earlier that evening were still in my briefcase. I pulled them out and placed them beside the acceptance letter. One represented years of ambition fulfilled. The other represented a chapter of my daughter's life I had barely witnessed. Daniel sat across from me, not angry, not accusatory, just tired. He said something I have never forgotten. He said, "Eleanor, the children have learned not to wait for you." That sentence landed heavier than any financial loss ever could. I tried to defend myself at first. I spoke about stability, about opportunity, about the future I was securing for all of us. Daniel listened patiently and then asked me a question I could not answer. He asked, "And who will share that future with you if we stop expecting you to be here?" I did not sleep that night. I walked through the house, touching the banister Daniel had installed, the photographs lining the walls, the trophies from Thomas's baseball seasons. I noticed how many of those photographs I was absent from. I had been behind the camera or at the store, Over the next few months I made small changes. I delegated more responsibility. I left the store earlier when I could. I attended Thomas's remaining games, but something subtle had shifted. The children were polite, appreciative even, yet a distance remained. They had adapted to my absence long before I recognized it. Emily left for college the following year. I helped her pack the car. I gave her advice about budgeting and time management. What I wanted to say was that I was sorry for the evenings I had missed, the conversations we never had. Instead, I hugged her and told her how proud I was. Thomas graduated high school and chose a university closer to home. We spent more time together during those years, and I am grateful for that. Yet I could sense he had learned self-reliance early. He did not expect me at every milestone. He had learned to celebrate quietly. Daniel and I grew older. The business continued to thrive, though I gradually stepped back from daily operations. We had more dinners together in our later years than we had in our youth. Sometimes we would sit on the porch in the evening, and he would hold my hand in that steady way of his. There was love there, always had been, but also an unspoken acknowledgement of time that could not be recovered. When Daniel passed away at 83, the house became unbearably quiet. The porch light still worked, but no one waited beneath it. I had wealth, investments, a respected name in the community. None of it prepared me for eating alone at a table built for four. Now, at 95, I spend most of my days in a smaller home near Emily. She visits often, and Thomas calls every Sunday. They are kind to me. They ensure I am comfortable. I am grateful beyond words for that. But I sometimes wonder what our relationship might have felt like if I had chosen differently in those early years, if I had treated time at home as non-negotiable rather than flexible. I am not ashamed of my work. I built something enduring. I provided opportunities for employees and contributed to my town's growth. There is value in that, but I misunderstood one essential truth. Achievement expands to fill every space you allow it, while childhood and marriage do not. They shrink quietly when neglected. If you are listening to me now and you are in the middle of building something, I am not here to tell you to abandon it. Ambition is not the enemy. Neglect is. Ask yourself who is adjusting their expectations around your absence. Ask yourself who has stopped waiting up for you. There was a night when I held a contract worth millions and an acceptance letter from my daughter in the same hand. One represented the world's approval. The other represented my child's hope that I would share her joy. I chose the contract too many times before I realized what it was costing me. At 95, success looks different than it did at 45. It is not measured in square footage or revenue. It is measured in conversations remembered clearly, in faces at the table, in the knowledge that when someone you love reaches for you, you are there. I cannot go back and sit at every dinner I missed. I cannot cheer at every game. What I can do is tell you that the porch light does not stay on forever. One day you will walk into a quiet house and realize that the people you were working for learned how to live without waiting for you. If you are fortunate, they will still love you. Mine do. But love does not erase absence. It only softens it. So tonight, if someone is expecting you home, consider going. The meeting will end. The contract will be signed by someone else if necessary. The years, however, will not pause. And when you are 95, sitting with your memories, you will not wish for one more deal. You will wish for one more ordinary evening at the table, with everyone still there, still waiting, and knowing you chose to walk through the door while it still mattered.